Hello and welcome to Daily Brown Bag. Today we're going to be talking about Matt Cutts' recent announcement that guest blogging is dead. I'm Chad Hill and I'm joined by Adam Stetzer.
Hey, good morning, Chad. Welcome to the Brown Bag. This is a very interesting topic. I think there's a lot of demand for information and insight on what Matt Cutts has just said yesterday about guest blog posting. And Chad, we just did a video on this last week trying to decide whether guest blog posting is good or not. We ultimately said it was in moderation. We also provided guidelines on how people in internet marketing should do it the right way. And we talked about the idea that getting a link should not be the main reason for partnering with someone to provide a guest blog post. It's obviously an incentive, and no one can deny that, but you need to put the audience value first. And we talked about that, so I'd reference people to our earlier video, which I think we'd still stand behind. But here's the breaking news. Yesterday, Matt Cutts literally pulled the pin out of the grenade and tossed it out onto the internet, and he said some pretty strong things related to guest blog posting, and specifically that it's done. He said it used to be a respectable thing, but the practice is now being abused now. If you're doing a lot of guest blogging, then you're hanging out with really bad company. And he referenced a lot of his previous videos, one from October 2012, then in July 2013, October 13, December 13, and now he's saying, put a fork in guest blogging, it's done. Really not tongue-in-cheek, really taking a pretty big swing at this. And I think as we look around the internet, Chad, probably no one disputes that there are people using this to promote really crappy content and masquerading as guest blog posts. But I think the discussion here and what's probably caused the biggest controversy is, did Matt Cutts really throw the baby out with the bathwater? Because he certainly made a lot of people angry. He was claiming that guest blogging is just not respectful anymore, and that's pretty much a slap in the face to anyone who puts in a lot of hard work, either to earn an opportunity for guest blog posting or to edit and wade through what's coming in and make sure what you put up is high quality content. And I think the discussion here, Chad, is what about sites like Moz and Search Engine Watch? These are very well-known sites, respectable sites, and they use a lot of guest content, but put in a lot of staff time to really make sure it's good. Danny Sullivan's also weighed in here, and I'm going to be really interested, Chad, in opinions on here. He said, quote, Google basically doesn't want people trying to build links any longer, despite having Google tell us that that was the advice for many years. And he said, why not place a bigger emphasis on authorship and creating good content? This seems like a much more rational approach than basically telling people not to guest blog posts. So interesting controversy here, Chad. I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Well, I think later in the day he came back and tried to clarify some of the things because, as with any statement that Matt Cutts writes, I mean, people are hanging on his every word in many cases. But he did come back later in the day and said that if your sole purpose that basically if your purpose is to seek out an audience who's interested in your content, then there's still some value in guest blog posting, but it should not be about the link only. He also said that to the point of the Moz community and the UMoz site that and other sites like that, that multi-author sites, basically that it's become spammy, but there still may be some value out there. And then he said that at the end of the day, guest blogging should never be done solely for the purpose of SEO. And I think this is really where you get into some of the going back through his videos. He's saying if there's ever a doubt, you should always follow the link. But it's always interesting to look at him at like the Open Site Explorer keeps track of the number of no-followed links, and it's still some really small percentage, like 2.9%. So this idea of coaching people to always be cautious about no-following links isn't, as far as I can tell, catching on the internet. Just given the sheer number of links out there, there's only still a relatively small number. So it is confusing, and I think that's really kind of where this is.
Yeah, and this is interesting. You said people are hanging on his words, and it does sort of remind me of the Fed chairman, Ben Bernanke, the previous one, or Alan Greenspan. He makes these statements, and then everybody, rushes around to try to interpret them to figure out if that's going to be future policy in the Google algorithm. And I do think that by itself is fascinating in terms of where things are and how much control Google has over the internet, but that's probably for a different brown bag. But back to the point of, is he really saying that you have to remove all incentive for people to want to guest post? Because that seems like a fairly untenable position. I think we've all accepted that money changing hands for links is something they really frown upon, and we've accepted that as rule, and we counsel clients all the time, don't do that. But the idea that you can't trade hours for exposure and receive a link back, a do follow link even, because it's been brokered and there is a real audience play and all those things that you said are in place, I'm struggling to understand why that's not okay. I understand there are people who abuse that and don't produce high quality content and are trying to claim they do, but it seems like there should be another method for distinguishing the two rather than, again, as Danny Sullivan said, throw the baby out with the bathwater and declare anyone who's doing this, even legitimately at great efforts on a great, high profile site is bad. So
yeah,
I wish I had the answer confusing. Yeah.
I wish I had the answer on that, and I think that's really where a lot of the discussion today is going. I mean, you can see sort of all the sites lighting up with ways to interpret this. But I think to just sort of end this, like really it comes down to what the advice, our advice I think still stands. You want to basically have a diverse online marketing program. We think guest blogging can fit into it, but it should be part of your overall program. I do think you need to take some of this recent information from Matt Cutts into account, which means that there also always has to be an audience value. And I think the place where people really struggle is what I'm doing, is that what Matt's talking about, or is it what somebody else is doing, but I don't really know what they're doing, so it's hard for me to figure that out. And that's often where we end up with these things, because they never give you super concrete examples of here's an acceptable example of a guest blog post and here's an unacceptable one. So we're always left sort of guessing in the middle. But that means we have to go back to, again, our advice, which is always make sure there's an audience component in it. Seek out the highest quality content you can and contribute something newsworthy or a new opinion that hasn't already been out there. And that's really, at the end of the day, what we suggest. And ultimately also that guest blogging should be with relationship and a partnership. It shouldn't just be an email blast you send out and you get a guest blog post and you never talk to that person again. It should be some sort of ongoing exchange and relationship with that partnership.
Yeah, that sounds like solid advice, and I think your point on staying close to news and how-tos and sharing information that really has that strong audience value is probably just the safest advice, because the closer you are to that, everyone sees that and they can tell when they read something or see a video or an infographic, is this really high quality and something someone would share. And I think we've talked about that in the past. Would you share this in your Twitter feed? If it doesn't pass that test, maybe you aren't in the right place. So some good advice, and hopefully this will help people digest some of the recent statements. We'd be interested in your comments. We know there's a lot of comments out there and a lot of opinions. Our forum lit up on this instantly. Please share your thoughts, and we hope to be back at our brown bag tomorrow.